The year is 2020. The world is in chaos, lockdowns, face masks, and a whole lot of banana bread. But there's one burning question inside of everyone's mind. When's the new iPhone dropping? Well, on the 13th of October 2020, that question was finally answered. And 10 days later, consumers were delighted to see a brand new shiny iPhone 12 directly in their hands. But it's 2024. Is the iPhone 12 even still worth it? And even if so, why do I now own a 15 Pro Max? This is the iPhone 12 4 years later. But before we dive into how it holds up today, let's talk about how the iPhone 12 wasn't just another iPhone release. It marked a major moment for Apple. So, how did it all begin? The iPhone 12 launched at a pretty wild time, right in the middle of a global pandemic. But despite all of the uncertainty, Apple went ahead and released the iPhone 12 series anyway. The result? One of the best-selling smartphones ever. Over 100 million units sold in just 6 months, and it hit that milestone 2 months faster than the iPhone 11. In fact, it almost matched the legendary performance, only done so by the iPhone 6. The secret sauce?
5G, 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 5G.
And OLED. In fact, the iPhone 12 is the first generation of iPhone to not only feature 5G, but it was the first generation where all of the iPhones in the lineup featured an OLED display, something that was a massive improvement over the previous generation's LCD display. At launch, the iPhone 12 had a starting price of $799 in the US, £799 in the UK, and €899 in Europe. But fast forward to 2024 and prices have dropped drastically. I mean, of course they have. The phone is now 4 years old. But you can now pick up a used or refurbished iPhone 12 on eBay or Facebook Marketplace. And you can get the device nowadays for €250, £220, or $200 depending on where you're based. But we all know the phone sold like hotcakes. We know it sold really well, but what made people fall in love with this device in the first place? Let's talk design. The iPhone 12 brought a big design change, and it still looks absolutely stunning in 2024, especially compared to the iPhone 11 and even the latest iPhone 16. Apple even reintroduced the flat edge design. This was Apple's nod to the classic iPhone 4 and 5 series, and it gave the 12 a modern, sharper look and one that was much more comfortable than the previous rounded edges. And it's a design that Apple has stuck with ever since. But another notable change was ceramic shield glass. Apple claimed it was 4 times more drop resistant than previous models, that being the iPhone 11 and below. Personally, I've always just slapped the screen protector on my device, so I haven't exactly been able to test this claim made by Apple. But it's comforting to know, right? One small but meaningful change was the screen sitting completely flush with the iPhone's body. This was unlike the curved display of the iPhone 11. This essentially meant that there was going to be fewer worries about damaging the screen, especially when you were dropping your device. At least now, the body would take the damage and not the screen. Apple also bumped up the IP68 water and dust resistance rating. Apple managed to bump it up from 2 meters to 6 meters for a total of 30 minutes. And they also managed to shave off some weight too. The iPhone 12 weighs in at a total of 164 grams, down 30 grams in weight from the iPhone 11's 194 grams. That's 18.29% lighter than the iPhone 11. And better yet, the iPhone 12 is still lighter than the iPhone 13, 14, 15 and 16 devices, making it one of the more comfortable modern iPhones today. But if we're being honest, it's pretty hard to tell the iPhone 12 apart from newer models. Unless you're looking at the dynamic island, which was introduced from the 14 Pros and beyond, or you're looking at the different camera layout, which was introduced from the iPhone 13s and beyond, the iPhone 12 still holds its own in terms of design. 4 years later, and it doesn't look dated at all. And while the design is easy on the eyes, what about the display itself? The iPhone 12 features a 6.1-inch Super Retina XDR OLED display. Seriously, Apple, that's such a mouthful. But jokes aside, even in 2024, the display holds up remarkably well. With a feature set like HDR10 and Dolby Vision, and especially with a peak brightness of 1200 nits, not only is the display vibrant and displays a colourful image, but it's great for day-to-day use scrolling through various different apps. The iPhone 12 also boasts a densely packed 460 pixels per inch on the OLED display. This not only set the norm for all of the latest iPhones today, but it was also a 41.1% increase over the iPhone 11's LCD display. However, one area where the iPhone 12 starts to show its age is the 60Hz refresh rate. And while it was fine in 2020, it feels outdated in 2024. Since the iPhone 13, all Pro models now offer the 120Hz ProMotion display, And it's safe to say, it's hard to go back to 60Hz when you're used to a 120Hz display. But with that being said, the iPhone 12 actually doesn't fall behind the latest base iPhone models. You see, the latest base iPhones also feature a refresh rate of 60Hz. Still, for most users, the iPhone 12's display is more than capable. It has a screen-to-body ratio of 86% compared to the iPhone 11's 79%. That's a 7% increase in screen-to-body ratio. Even today, it only gets edged out by the later iPhones, like the 13, 14, 15, and 16 models, with the latter boasting a screen-to-body ratio of 86.8%. A percentage so small, you probably wouldn't even notice it. And hey, if you find this video interesting about the iPhone 12, why don't you drop the video a like and maybe even subscribe to the channel? Not only will it help the channel out, but it'll keep you in the loop whenever I post more content. But anyways, let's get back to the iPhone 12. So, the display still shines. But what good is a beautiful screen if the battery can't hold up? You see, when the iPhone 12 first released, the battery life was solid. Nothing mind-blowing, but it was respectable. Fast forward to 2024, and, well, battery degradation is a real thing. Once the battery health drops below 80%, you really start to notice it. Big time. And even in my case with my iPhone 12, especially when the battery health dropped to about 76%, I found I was charging the device around twice a day, especially when 5G was enabled. There were even articles back in 2020 regarding 5G and how it drained the battery up to 20% faster than 4G. And from experience, I can't disagree. Now, if you're still rocking an iPhone 12 and your battery is nearing that 80% mark, a battery replacement is a game changer. It not only restores performance, but it gives the device a new lease of life. And for anyone buying a used or refurbished iPhone 12 today, make sure to check the battery before you bite the bullet. A replacement battery from Apple can be quite costly, and it can be about $100 to £100 or even €100. But it's definitely the best thing you can do to get the most out of the phone. Alright, so it's pretty clear that the battery needs a little bit of TLC in order to keep it going. But what about the cameras? The iPhone 12's camera setup might seem basic in 2024, but back in the day, it was a serious contender. The dual 12 megapixel setup, main and ultra wide, still delivers impressive photos even today. Whether you're snapping pics during the day or you're recording 4K 60 FPS, the iPhone 12 still holds its ground. That ultra-wide lens, super handy for capturing more in your shots without sacrificing much quality. But here's the thing, compared to the iPhone 15 and 16, the iPhone 12 is really starting to show its age, especially when it comes to low light conditions. The newer sensors and improved software in recent iPhones are just on another level when it comes to night shots. And the iPhone 12 lacks any good zoom functionality that you would otherwise get on the iPhone Pro models. Still, for a phone that's 4 years old, the iPhone 12's cameras are nothing to sneeze at. So, the cameras may not be cutting edge anymore, but they still hold their own. Now, let's talk performance, because if the phone isn't smooth, it's not worth using, right? At the heart of the iPhone 12 is Apple's A14 Bionic chip. A beast back in 2020, but still very capable in 2024. Whether you're multitasking, gaming, or going through the latest apps, this chip is more than capable. Day-to-day tasks feel snappy, and it even handles games like F1 Clash without breaking a sweat. As for storage, the iPhone 12 originally came with a 64GB, a 128GB, and a 256GB option. In 2024, that 64GB model is going to feel extremely cramped. I found myself constantly managing storage and had to cave and get the 50GB iCloud subscription for about 99 cents a month. The iPhone 12 has about 4GB of RAM, which is fine today, but the latest iPhones like the 15 and 16 have about 6 to 8GB respectively, and that more memory allows for better multitasking. But overall, unless you're pushing your phone to its absolute limits, the iPhone 12's performance remains surprisingly solid. So performance? Still surprisingly solid. But let's talk about charging, accessories, and those infamous and soon to be outdated lightning ports. The iPhone 12 was the first iPhone to introduce MagSafe. And MagSafe was a game changer for accessories and wireless charging. You could just slap on a MagSafe charger, a wallet, or any other accessories, and boom, it snaps right into place. And the 15-watt wireless charging is convenient. It's not the fastest, but it's still pretty good. On the wired side, the iPhone 12 still uses the Apple Lightning port, which in 2024 feels a little bit old school, especially with the latest iPhones now featuring USB Type-C. So, if you're rocking a mixed ecosystem of devices, having to carry around both Lightning and USB Type-C cables can be a bit annoying. Charging speed? It's decent. 15 watts for wireless charging and about 20 watts for wired charging, although that does feel a little bit sluggish for 2024. Although, nonetheless, the iPhone 12 gets the job done. Now, Hardware aside, one of the biggest reasons to stick with an iPhone is the software. And one of the best things about owning an iPhone is Apple's long-term software support. The iPhone 12 is able to run iOS 18 in 2024 and handles it just fine thanks to that trusty A14 Bionic chip. Whether you're using social media apps, gaming, or doing productivity tasks, the iPhone 12 doesn't slow down all too much. Looking ahead, the iPhone 12 is gonna get about 1 or 2 more major iOS updates. iOS 19 for sure, iOS 20, that's a maybe. Even if support ends after iOS 19, you can still use your iPhone 12, but just be wary and be cautious as there will be security vulnerabilities and they won't be patched anymore. So, with all that in mind, what's the final verdict? Is the iPhone 12 still worth it in 2024? Is it still a solid buy in 2024? Or is it time to move on to something newer? Let's wrap it up. Now that we've dissected every aspect of the iPhone 12 in 2024, it's clear that this 4-year-old device still has plenty to offer, especially if you're considering the price. The build quality? Still rock solid. The display is more than capable, even though it's held back by the 60Hz refresh rate. And as for performance, the A14 Bionic chip still packs a serious punch. But let's be real, if you're used to one of the newer models like the iPhone 13, 14, 15 or 16, you're not likely to be considering the iPhone 12. However, if you're upgrading from something older like the iPhone X or 11, or you're wanting to trial out the Apple ecosystem for cheap, the 12 could still be a solid option, though you'll definitely notice some differences compared to the latest models. From the dated Lightning port to the basic 60Hz screen, all the way to the slightly lagging cameras in low light situations, it's not perfect. However, for anyone who wants a reliable iPhone without dropping a small fortune on the latest and greatest, the iPhone 12 is still very much in the game. And it's a great device if you want to get into Apple's ecosystem, especially for cheap. If you've been considering picking up a refurbished model, or if you're just thinking about holding on to your device for a little longer, I think the answer is pretty clear. The iPhone 12 is still a solid choice. You just have to keep your expectations in check, especially when it comes to battery life and some of the latest iPhone bells and whistles. And hey, while you're thinking about that, make sure to hit the subscribe button and comment down below. Are you still using the iPhone 12 or have you upgraded to one of the newer iPhones? Before we wrap things up, let's get to the final question. Is the iPhone 12 worth buying in 2024? Absolutely, if you're looking for a solid performer at a bargain price. But if you're someone who craves cutting-edge features like a higher refresh rate, faster charging, and more powerful cameras, it might be time to look elsewhere like the iPhone 14, 15, or 16 Pro and Pro Max, or at least wait for a deal on a much newer model. Either way, the choice is yours. But if you found this video helpful, make sure to like the video and maybe even comment down below. What are your thoughts about the iPhone 12 in 2024? And also, while you're doing that, make sure to also subscribe. I have a lot more tech content coming your way.